New year, same chaos. As aspiring Bond villain Elon Musk continues to set the agenda in Westminster, will Britain finally get its moment of reckoning in the gang rape scandal that has blighted our northern towns? The issue has become something of a political dividing line. We talk to both sides. I'm Harry Cole, and this is Never Mind the Ballots. Joining me first is a man who says there should be a new national inquiry into the scandal. Shadow Home Secretary Philp writes in today's Sun, last night's shameful vote exposed Labour's lack of both a backbone and anything resembling a moral compass. Philp, big words. When did you personally decide there should be a new inquiry into a scandal that's been going on for close to 2 decades?
Well, I think what really tipped it for me was when I saw Oldham Council themselves, as an organisation, were pleading with the government to run a proper nationally led investigation. They wrote that letter last July. Jess Phillips replied to it in October, but it only became public, I think, just over a week ago. And when I saw that the local authorities themselves in the affected area felt that they couldn't investigate it themselves, they needed the government to get involved, that is when I realised personally that a national inquiry was needed.
And it had nothing to do with the world's richest man and his 211 million followers on X, once known as Twitter, the company that he bought and runs and owns and games the algorithm to put his own tweets at the very top of it. Nothing to do with that. It was all a story that you read about a letter.
So look, Conservatives have been pursuing this issue for 10 years. It was back in 2014 that Theresa May initiated the first inquiry into, I think it was Rochdale. Again in 2015, the ICSA inquiry. Sajid Javid, 2018, gathering evidence on the ethnicity of the perpetrators. And Rishi Sunak in 2023 launching the Grooming Gangs Task Force. So the Conservatives have a 10year track record of fighting this issue.
We can pick at that in a minute, but when one Oldham councillor wrote a couple of years ago to the government, the Home Office refused an investigation. There has been ample opportunity over the last 14 years to have a specific inquiry into grooming that your government didn't do.
Well, that was a request by one individual councillor. The ICSA inquiry, which was a national inquiry, was still running at that time, and that was initiated by Conservatives. Look, the other thing that struck me, actually, looking at this whole episode, is that over decades, this has been covered up and swept under the carpet, going right back to Anne Cryer, the Labour MP for Keighley, who raised this in the early 2000s. She was, people tried to silence her, people mainly in the Labour Party. We saw Simon Danchuk come out just a few days ago and say that when he was the Labour MP for Rochdale, the then chair of the Parliamentary Labour Party tried to silence him. Of course, Sarah Champion, as recently as 2017, was forced out of the Labour front bench because she spoke out on this issue. So we can see this being swept under the carpet, often by the Labour Party. And last night's vote in Parliament was just the latest instalment in that sweeping under the carpet approach they've taken. And actually what Keir Starmer said last Monday, when he said that raising this issue was a far-right bandwagon, was wrong, it was despicable. And again, that forms part of a pattern of behaviour where the left try and sweep this under the carpet.
Well, Labour will be here after you to defend all that. But I want to talk about the Tories and whether they're using this as, you got routed in July. There's no denying that. You're down to a rump. You could barely muster 100 MPs last night on your own side in what has been the biggest vote so far, I'd say, of Kemi Badenoch's leadership. Are you just using this as a stick to beat the government round the head with, as an opportunity, seeing that people are genuinely angry out there and kind of playing a bit of politics with it?
No, this is about this is about standing up for victims. And as I say, the Conservatives have a track record going back to 2014, a 10-year track record dealing with this. The Grooming Gangs Task Force was set up by Rishi a couple of years ago. It led to 550 arrests. So we've got a real track record on this. And this is an issue that needs sorting out. We're saying we need to get to the truth. That's not about politics. It's about standing up for victims. And by the way, Harry, there is plenty of things we've got to beat the government with. The bond market melting down, taxes going up, winter fuel cancelled.
You'll get your chance to talk about all of that.
We are not short of sticks to beat the government with.
Let's stick on this for the moment, though. Elon Musk, has he been a help or a hindrance to your cause on this? Obviously, he has put rocket boosters, quite literally, underneath this story. He has been tweeting about it, I think, more than 200 times. He's almost manically pushing the story. Is he a help or a hindrance to the cause of victims?
Well, I think he certainly raised the salience of the issue and probably got it a wider hearing than it would have got otherwise. If we're completely honest, that's probably the effect he's had. Now, he has on occasion used language.
Well, yeah, I mean, calling Jess
Philp
Phillips a rape genocide apologist, calling for Keir Starmer to go to... Should Keir Starmer be in prison?
Yeah, no, of course not. No, I don't condone that language. That language is wrong. I don't condone that at all. But I think it is reasonable that he raises the issue in general terms, and he has raised the salience. But I definitely don't support that.
But
kind
he
of
seems to
language.
be sort of pivoting away from Nigel Farage, who he's got off because he wouldn't support Tommy Robinson. And now, I looked at his Twitter feed this morning. He's bigging up Kemi Badenoch. Is he an ally? Is he helpful?
Well, I mean, look, I don't really know.
Would the Tories take Elon money?
He has his own opinion. Obviously, he's very independently minded. He'll express his own views. Look, we'll do our job here domestically in the UK with the opposition. It's our job to hold the government to account. That is what we're doing.
Last night, look, was a bit of a stunt because it was a second reading of a wider bill. You managed to get it your amendment just about in scope to tack it on, but there was no way the government were going to play ball on that because it would have kiboshed the entire schools and children's wellbeing bill. What next? Is this a flash in the pan, a bit of a quiet New Year's news cycle? Jump on this. How are you going to pursue your goal of a national inquiry beyond political stunts?
No, we're certainly... Well, first of all, a vote in Parliament is not a political stunt. Harry, we used the first opportunity available to put this to a vote on the floor
essentially
of Parliament. But look, as soon as we get an opportunity to put down a specific amendment to a bill, perhaps at report stage, where you can put down an amendment just on this topic, which is the ideal way of doing it, my expectation is we will take that opportunity. We're going to keep campaigning on this issue. We're not going to give up. We're going to... And there was a bit of a hint yesterday, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Maybe Labour are thinking of a U-turn on this, because they must have been sitting there knowing they're letting down victims.
Well, I'd be fair. I mean, seeing the MPs for Oldham, for Rochdale, for Rotherham march through the division lobbies, I suspect they will get some people. But what does an inquiry actually look like? Look, there was, you can dispute the fact the Alexis J inquiry took too long, was too broad, and wasn't focused on this issue. But what does an inquiry actually look like? Are we really going to have another sort of 5 years, multi-million pounds spent, lawyers getting rich, victims, dragged all through this again, perhaps unwillingly in some cases? How are you going to have a short, sharp inquiry that is going to have any meaningful effect on this?
Yes,
beyond a political stunt.
Yeah, look. So on the J report, that only covered 6 of the towns affected, and it didn't really go very deeply into the gang issue. So the J report, was a good start, but it's definitely not enough. So what do we need? It's got to be short, sharp, and focused. We definitely can't have a 4 or 5 year inquiry. That just takes far too long. I'd also say it is possible to implement the recommendations of the previous inquiry and prosecute these vile perpetrators.
So essentially, it's a show trial then?
No, it's not a show trial.
I think the point of an inquiry is to find out an answer to a question you don't know the answer to. We know what happened. These vile Pakistani heritage rape gangs were exploiting British children, and were allowed to do so seemingly under the nose of the councils, the schools, the police.
So I'll tell you what
we know what happened.
I want to know which public officials, which councils, which police...
So you want essentially a show trial?
I want to know who covered this up. I want to know who failed these victims by being negligent, by disbelieving their accounts. I want to see a day of reckoning for those people who did not do their job properly.
That's not an inquiry, though. That's a show trial.
No, it's not a show trial. It's getting to the truth about what happened. It's finding out if there are other towns where this happened that we don't even know about sitting here today. And the problem with some of the local inquiries, which apparently is now the government policy, a local inquiry in Oldham, Keir Starmer mentioned this local inquiry in Manchester. Those local inquiries generally do not have the legal powers to summon witnesses. They can't take evidence under oath. They can't requisition evidence. And Harry, in fact, the chairs of the Manchester inquiry, which Starmer referred to at PMQs this week, actually resigned last year because they didn't have the powers to get the evidence, and public bodies were still, as recently as 6 months ago, covering things
hand
up.
on heart, honestly believe that the Labour Party, as Kemi Badenoch basically said at PMQs yesterday, do you hand on heart believe that the reason that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are blocking national inquiries because they genuinely fear that the Labour Party will be implicated?
They want, I think, potentially, yes. We've seen Sarah Champion, as recently as 2017, being drummed off the Labour front bench because she raised this issue. We've had Simon Danchuk telling us he was told to shut up by the chair of the Labour Party. We had Keir Starmer...
Very big accusation to be making.
We had Keir Starmer, as recently as Monday of this week, saying it was far-right to be raising a far-right bandwagon to be raising the issue, although by Wednesday he seemed to be backing off that. So there is a long-standing culture, going back decades, on the left to try and brush this stuff under the carpet, and that is not good enough. That is not good enough, Harry.
Let's broaden out a bit, away from this, this incredibly toxic issue. How is Kemi Badenoch doing? As she's been in the job, a few months now?
Oh,
this is the first time she's really sort of had any real cut through. Do you think she's doing all right?
I think she is. Look, she's been in the job about 8 weeks, and that included Christmas. And I think she's doing a good job. Look, she's first of all, the shadow cabinet are united. We had a meeting as recently as
Publicly,
Tuesday.
I'd say they're united.
Publicly and privately, actually. I think she's doing a good job. I think she has a real ability to communicate that is quite rare in politics. Some people have it, like Boris had it, and people like Bill Clinton had it. But it's quite a rare.
She's a new Bill Clinton.
I think I think she has the potential to be the new Margaret Thatcher.
Really?
I think our nation is in a very similar situation today to where it was in 1975, with a Labour government sending us sort of over an economic cliff edge, and we need someone with dynamism and vision to rescue our country.
Is it really credible? So, as revealed in today's Sun, Kemi Badenoch basically said it's a 3-year plan to turn things around and get the Tories back fighting fit after their routing. You've obviously got the problems of reform on the right. You've got a massive Labour majority to your left. But essentially, she's saying, look, spend the next year detoxifying the party, essentially rebuilding trust, then presenting a credible alternative government, and then it won't be until 27 that we really get the meat and flesh of the policies. Is it really credible to spend the next 2 years basically chucking rocks?
No, I think we're going to get some substance before then, obviously. It's not going to be a complete vacuum for 2 years. But what we're not going to do is publish an entire manifesto like tomorrow.
Sure, but you're going to need some policies.
You know what, Harry? We started that process in late November, 3 or 4 weeks ago, when Kemi and I gave speeches. I can't remember if you were there or not. And we talked about immigration.
Yeah,
and
you apologised.
We did. We said there have been very serious mistakes made. But we also started pointing to the future direction. We said there will be a legally binding hard cap, way lower than current levels, right? So that was a new thing. We are going to have a Rwanda-style deterrent where people that come here illegally get kicked out very rapidly, return somewhere else, so they don't bother crossing in the first place. We saw that work in Australia. We're going to be a lot tougher with migrants and benefits.
These are all things that Robert Jenrick was saying to do in the leadership election, though, and you voted against him, and Kemi voted against him. Sort of tacitly accepting he was right.
No, I didn't vote against Robert. I voted for Kemi. They're both good. They're both good friends. And so we are going to see, I think, some more ideas like those fleshed out a bit. We're not going to publish a full manifesto, but we are going to have some ideas in the coming months. And look, I think you've got Labour who are completely failing, whacking up taxes, whacking pensioners, whacking farmers, whacking working people, giving away islands. In fact, paying to give away islands. In the Indian,
they'll be here. We talk about Labour when Labour are here, but
and
we talk about Tories now.
Then you've got Reform, who don't have, who won't have detailed and credible plans. They're good at slogans, but I don't think they're good at real solutions. So I think there is going to be
the party of Stop the Boats. I think that's a bit rich.
Well, you're going to hear proper plans from us between now and the next election,
but not before 27.
No, you'll hear plenty before then. Don't worry.
All right, well, you apologise for migration. The leader of the opposition told the shadow cabinet. I'm told that there'll be more apologies forthcoming for other failings of the Tories in over 14 years. What's next on the sort of grovel agenda?
Well, look, I'm not going to obviously speak for Kemi, but look, I would like to see a future Conservative government get immigration down a lot. I'd like to see a zero tolerance approach.
Where would you put the cap? 100,000?
No, I'm not going to give you a number. But
well, they said there'd be a numerical cap.
I said that's right, a hard numerical cap, legally binding, and I tell you this, it'll be a lot lower than the current levels of net immigration.
Well, I hope so, because it's 1 million people came last year.
And it'll be a lot lower even than the OBR forecast, which at the budget was about 350,000. It'll be a lot lower than both of those numbers. And you know what? I also want to see a plan to get taxes down, because we are being crippled. Let's talk about
the economy. Rachel Reeves is due in China this weekend. Bond markets are having a bit of a blip. The pound is going the wrong way. Not, dare I add, as low as perhaps when you were Chief Secretary of the Treasury in 2022, but it's looking a little kind of October 2022-ish in the markets. Why do you think that suddenly, with long-term borrowing as high as it was under Liz Truss,
higher,
higher just, and the pound going the wrong way, gloomy economic numbers, why is Rachel Reeves not having the Truss treatment?
Well, that's a really good question. As you say, bond yields are higher, meaning bond prices are lower than they were at the point that Kwasi Kwarteng got sacked.
So you're saying fire the Chancellor?
Years ago. I'm just observing.
Should the Chancellor be fired?
I'm just observing. Well, I think she's doing a terrible job. I think the whole government should be fired, frankly, including Rachel Reeves, because they've jacked up taxes, they've crushed pensioners, they're crushing farmers, they're crushing businesses with their high taxes, and this is the result because the bond market can see that our economy is being squashed by this Labour government, and that is why our bonds are getting routed.
Long-term borrowing costs are up across Europe as well. I mean, surely isn't this just a sort of a pre sort of Trump jitter?
No, it's got nothing to do with Trump.
Well, I mean, they're expecting tariffs and tariffs to hit European economies in the coming months. Isn't this just
Harry, our interest rates are about here in the UK about 2% higher than they are in Europe. Our bond prices are being driven down and yields up.
And you genuinely
because
believe
of
that's
Labour's
because of the budget?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the economic outlook for our economy is now much, much worse than it was before the budget because she is saddling businesses with tax. It's going to cause job losses. It's going to cause wages to be suppressed. It's going to slow economic
Should
growth.
the Chancellor be scurrying off to China this weekend when the bond markets are in the turmoil they're in?
I don't. I think
so. She should cancel the trip.
She should be staying in the UK, fixing the mess that her budget created.
Chris Philp, thank you very much. Welcome to your first debut on Never Mind the Ballots.
I hope the first of many.
Indeed. Thank you very much.